Forgiveness, first and foremost, is a movement of our own heart. It's a recognition that we're not defined by someone else.
That's good.
That we're going to step over this hurt and this pain, and we're going to stop and put it to the side and realize that regardless of what happens, I can forgive somebody who hurt me, not because I'm okay with what they did, not because I am validating their choices, but by saying whatever pain and hurt in their life has caused them to behave in such a way, I'm sorry for them. And I will no longer carry that weight. I will no longer carry that definition of who they want, how they want to define me into my next step.
Welcome to another episode of BeyondU. Tori, always great to catch up. How are you today?
Hey, doing great. Excited for today's conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We're excited to have Kyle White, our Vice President for Student Affairs on the show today. So Kyle, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here today. So let's just start with talking about some of your background as far as, I mean, you've done a lot of different things in life. One of those is you've been involved in the mental health field for a little while now. So those different things that you've been involved in, how has it helped prepare you for what you're doing now?
So anything that we go through is preparation for what's next. And that's the amazing grace that God gives us in our lives. I don't know that I've ever felt prepared for any ministry I'm called to in the moment. So it requires me to lean on the wisdom, those around me, hiring the right people to really fill in the gaps. But as in anything, what we are working with here at the school are both spiritual needs, psychological needs, sociological needs. And really all of those together has been part of my journey in working in the church as a pastor, working in the mental health field, and just really my own transformation as well. So all those things come together, and it's amazing how God doesn't always send you to where you want to go, but sends you where you're needed. Mm-hmm. That's a Henry Nouwen quote, which I love. And he prepares you along the way. And so there are days when I'm worried about what's next, considering the preparation I'm going through in that day. I love the idea that anything we're called to do, he'll prepare us to do.
Yeah, that's really good.
So tell us just a little bit for those that might be listening, because Ben and I know a little bit of what you do, at least a fragment of it. Kyle, you wear a lot of hats here at OKWU. Tell us a little bit about your journey here to OKWU, what you do. Elaborate on that just a little bit.
So I've been here 20 years and full time. Thank you for that.
He's still only 26.
I know, right?
So
I had to.
I know. I appreciate that. I started teaching for the School of Business in 2001. I was working as a pastor here in town, then also as at a Youth and Family Services here in town, and had the opportunity to come work at the school. I actually have a degree from here, an adult graduate studies degree, GPS degree. And loved the school, loved the idea of what the school does, and was planning on coming and just teaching. And I taught for a year. My wife told me I would be bored only teaching, and she knows best on these things. And taught for a year. I think the next year I was asked to be chair of the School of Psychology and then dean of the School of Arts and Science. In that same year, I was asked to be vice president for Student Affairs.
Yeah,
and
so many
been here
hats.
ever since, yes.
Many hats. So your day-to-day work these days now as a vice president, kind of you entertain all sorts of things here at Oklahoma Wesleyan. So tell us just a little bit about that.
So there's a lot of areas that I oversee and work with. But the reality is, as exciting as it can seem to be, I've hired amazing people that are better at this job than I am. And that's my one true talent. My one true talent is finding people, bringing them in and letting them really take the lead. So I get to work with Ben, who's over PATH, our PATH Center, which does amazing work with Kirk Kelly, who's our athletic director, and also as just a great man of God, and our coaches who truly make an impact on our school. And then just a lot of various, from safety, residential life, student health, a lot of various things that I work with.
Lots of different hats.
Yeah. Let's talk for a little bit, Kyle, just on some of your philosophy for human growth and some of these things like that, because you do you manage people, you work with students. I mean, you do a lot of different things here on campus. So I know one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is the whole idea of responsibility, right? And helping students or people for that matter, anybody, to become more responsible for their own existence, their own choices and things like that. So why do you think that whole concept of responsibility is so important to human growth and being growing into the people that God has called us to be?
So part of our journey is recognizing the strengths that we have, who God made us to be. So one of the things that I get to work with students a lot on is this idea that what they've been through, whether it was tragedy or trauma or just life, is not the definition of who they are. It's a part of their journey. Their definition is what they choose to do, what they choose to do next. And regardless of what has happened to them, regardless of how they were defined by others, regardless of their own stumbles, that freedom to be able to choose what to do next, even if it seems smaller than what it should be. Sometimes our choices lead us into a direction where we don't have as much agency as we want to as someone else. But we always have some way of making a choice that's going to be different than the choice we made before, or better, or ongoing. And I think that's what the idea of being made in the image of God is recognizing that God created us in his image so that we are not stuck. I mean, he found a way.
Yeah.
Through sending his son here, and if he's that level, if he allows us that level of grace through that drastic of an act, then we have those opportunities. And so I can't think of anything more important than this concept that we are not stuck. That whatever has happened, whatever we've done, tomorrow's new.
Yeah.
What do we do next?
Yep. You and I have talked at length, Kyle, in working with students and different people, that one of the things you say over and over again is you are not your struggle, right? You're not. Right. So why does that matter so much in these conversations about kind of the ability to choose and be responsible for our own existence?
So on a level of heaviness, there is a difficulty in us accepting the responsibility of freedom. It's weighty. And so for a lot of times, we want to define ourselves by other people's actions or by our past actions so we don't have to hold on to the responsibility of that next step. And so if we do that, we still are making the choice. I mean, this isn't a great philosophical idea. The reality is we choose next. If we say we're not going to choose, well, that still is a choice. Right. It's like saying, what are you going to do to make the sun come up tomorrow? Well, the sun's coming up. It's happening.
Sure.
You're making choices. And so what we try to do is just help people to understand that you pretending that you don't have agency is not going to make a difference in your struggle. Yeah. And then helping them to understand that weight of responsibility is also something, there's something more that's there, because that weight is already there. The weight is there. So you pretending like it's not there doesn't change the fact that the weight is there. So let's own that. Yeah. Let's know that tomorrow we are responsible for the choice that we make, regardless of what's happened to us. And it doesn't mean that we're minimizing the pain, doesn't mean that we're minimizing all these other things or the difficulty of what you've been through. But tomorrow, you've got to choose. You got to choose now. Yeah. Right. So let's work on that. And so I love the fact that the stigma around mental health has lessened. I think that's a great thing. I think the difficult part of that is we have become too enamored with the idea of mental health being the issue that we struggle with, to the point of where we want to use that as the reason for, and there are absolutely are times where that may be the case, but we oftentimes will get stuck within that label. When the reality is, even within that label, there's choices that we can make to move forward. Yeah. Did I answer?
It does. Your question? Yeah. And why do you think? And this is maybe part of a larger question. Why do you think that we're drawn towards those labels as identity markers, or what is it about a label of whether it's mental health or some sort of condition that we almost cope with it? We almost kind of find a reason to hide behind that. Do you think?
We want to make sense.
Sure.
We want to make sense of what's going on around us. Our brains do this automatically. It wants to take the information that it has and make sense. And a lot of times, we might have a hard time, for example, when I work with people who have gone through abuse and trauma, And sometimes when they're still stuck within those relationships and they are excusing someone else's behavior that has hurt them over and over again. And you want to ask the question, why are they doing that? Well, they're trying to find other reasons that make sense. Because to admit that, man, that's difficult. I have to change everything about the world that I see if I admit that this person that I love also can be a monster sometimes. Sure. Mm-hmm. And the reality is both can exist. You can love that person can still be a monster. And then on a personal level, we want to make sense of why we're doing what we're doing. And there are absolutely times when the mental health aspect, when the way the brain is operating is contributing to that behavior. And so if we're not careful, though, we give that so much power and that we're saying that is the reason. And in making sense of those drives, we want to then give up the level of responsibility for what we do within the concept of those drives are pushing us. So we might have some anxiety. We might have these things. I suffer from anxiety. But within that, what can we do? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we get stuck is we get relaxed when we go, oh, it's anxiety. Oh, it's ADHD. Oh, it's autism. Oh, so we get relaxed with that and we make sense of it. And then we don't want to take that next step. Okay, knowing that, what do we do?
Sure. Sometimes
those labels, while they make things make sense, they also present barriers. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about we've identified just in that conversation or that piece of our conversation, a barrier. What are some other barriers or challenges, obstacles, whatever word you want to put in there, for people when it comes to taking agency in their mental health?
Well, part of it is the idea, again, I think the biggest barrier is weight. There's a level of anxiousness that happens whenever you take some form of movement. Anxiety in and of itself is not bad. We have, there is a clinical level of anxiety. There is a level of anxiety that's pathological within the organism that you might need some help with. But anxiety itself is informative. It tells you something. And there are times when I'm working with a student and they will tell me, but Kyle, if I admit that I can do something, I feel very anxious with that idea. And I always let them know that's good, because it is anxious, because you're risking that you might try this and you still may fail. You're risking that you want to do this and maybe it doesn't get fixed right away. You're risking these things, and that's okay. So part of it is this willingness to try, this willingness to take away the reasons why we fail and own the fact that we may try something and we still may fail. We may not be the best. We may not be the brightest. We may not be the smartest. We may not be the best looking person or the best singer. And so oftentimes what happens is we work with students who want to give you a reason for why they didn't do as well as they wanted to do. And so they're holding back. So they're not going all out. Because if they went all out and they didn't actually do as well as they want to pretend they could do, then that means that, well, they're less than. And so part of that barrier is not only are we facing the anxiety that's uncomfortable with trying something, because anytime we take responsibility, it's on us, and if we fail, it's on us. We also have to get past this idea that we have to be perfect. We have to get past this idea that it's okay for us to not be the best. In fact, most of us are not the best. Very few of us. If there's really a best, well, there's, 99.99% are not the best.
Right.
And we have to live with that. And so I think there are times where, as some of our students have grown up, their parents, in trying to protect them, have told them that any time that they have not been the best, the reason is outside of themselves. And that's created this barrier of extrinsic validation, battling with intrinsic reality.
I know Kyle and we're very careful here at Oklahoma Wesleyan that we don't do counseling on campus with students. Like we'll refer students out for professional counseling or like that. But I know you work with students a lot just who maybe have been through difficult things in the past. And so when you think about that, how do you work with somebody who maybe has experienced unjust treatment in their life in some form? How do you work with them to help gently kind of move them from a place where they see themselves less as a victim and more towards empowered or responsible for their own story and their direction moving forward?
So one of the best ways that we can do this is through the process of forgiveness. And begin to understand that forgiveness is not about the other person. It's not about the person that hurt you. Forgiveness requires a level of trust. But the problem is when we put the the onus of forgiveness on the person who hurt us, we've already established that we can't trust that person. And so if we have to trust that person, well, then we may never forgive. If our forgiveness has to be accepted.
Yeah, if it's dependent upon their
It's not,
acceptance.
it's
Sure.
not going to happen. Or we get these fantasies in our mind that what we'll do is I'll go and say, listen, Tori, I forgive you for hurting me. And in our minds, what's going to happen is Tori's going to go, oh my goodness, oh, I am
Kyle,
so
I'm
sorry.
so
I am
sorry.
so right.
Yeah.
But the reality is, for most of these situations, the level of hurt that happened, you would never have hurt me in that way. In this
This is
example,
true.
if you had the capacity to be hurt by my forgiveness. And so we build up these fantasies in our mind that we want to use forgiveness as a weapon. We want to move somebody else through our forgiveness, when that's probably not going to happen. Forgiveness, first and foremost, is a movement of our own heart. It's a recognition that we're not defined by someone else.
That's good.
That we're going to step over this hurt and this pain, and we're going to stop and put it to the side and realize that regardless of what happens, I can forgive somebody who hurt me, not because I'm okay with what they did, not because I am validating their choices, but by saying whatever pain and hurt in their life has caused them to behave in such a way, I'm sorry for them. And I will no longer carry that weight. I will no longer carry that definition of who they want, how they want to define me into my next step. It's a difficult process. It's not a one and done.
Sure.
It's an ongoing process. But I really think that first step of movement is recognizing that I can forgive others by no longer carrying this anger, this pain, this sense of I want to get justice, a sense of I want to fix it, because very rarely in these situations does that happen. And that movement is such an amazing movement. And one of the most beautiful ways that I see this play out is when I'm working with a student and they're telling me a story of their past, oftentimes their traumatic past, and they remember something that even in the midst of the trauma, there was something beautiful that happened. They tell me about a Christmas celebration, and they'll oftentimes will stop and say, I didn't realize that memory was there. And what happens is when we allow that trauma to be so prevalent in our lives, we forget the things that had happened that were positive, the way that God was moving even in those moments. And so forgiveness is such a giant step towards health, towards agency, towards recognizing that I don't have to be defined by. I am not the abused one. I am not these things.
Well, in some ways, if I hear you correctly, it's almost like you're saying that forgiveness is the conduit towards flourishing in life.
It is.
And so for the people that might be listening right now that you've just flipped their whole paradigm of what forgiveness looks like, talk to the people, and maybe this is a little bit repetitive to what you were just saying, but talk to those that might be struggling with this concept of forgiveness, whether it's self-forgiveness or even others' forgiveness,
Right.
Flourishing being the goal. How do you practically get there? How do you overcome, even if it is with self or with others? How do you get there?
It's a very unique journey for each person, but there are some commonalities. I'll use myself as the example for one of them. I recognized one day that while I was learning to forgive others, and I had to go through that process of not wanting justice to happen. The one area of my life that I really struggled with was letting someone forgive me. So if I made a mistake, the idea that someone could forgive me of that mistake was terrible. I didn't want them to forgive me. Are you kidding me? I want to fix it. Don't forgive me. Let me fix it. Right. Because I was still holding on to this idea of control, that I had some delusion that I could control it at such a level. But if I allow God to forgive my sins, if I've already opened up that place, and that's usually where I ask people to begin and say, listen, you don't trust others. That's fine. I get that. And I get why. But let's begin working on our prayer life. Let's begin working on trusting God. Let's begin recognizing that God's love for you, He knows. You're not hiding anything there. He knows. And that step of letting someone else forgive you can really help bridge that ability to forgive someone else. And for me, I had to go the other way. It was such a barrier, and it still is. If I've hurt someone, I don't want them to forgive me. I don't. I want to fix it. But working with Ben and student development group and some of these people that I've worked with for so many years has really helped me. My wife has been my biggest person in my life that's helped me heal through this. But that recognition that I can trust somebody else enough, just like I could trust God, that I can risk that to let them forgive me and still be whole. Was such an amazing gift. But little things like that, recognizing where for you that big catch point is.
For sure.
And sometimes it's for others, it's about finding that one small piece, that one movement. So what I'm always looking for is, what is that movement? So if you go, no, if I made a mistake, forgive me away, great, I love it. But that person right there who gave me the coffee wrong, I'm going to be thinking about them all day. And so let's take that small step. And so one of the things that we work on is, what is something that you can do? Instead of focusing in on all these things that you can't do, what is something you can do? What is a person who has recently hurt you that you can go, it's okay. It's okay. And sometimes you don't run to the coffee shop and say, you gave me the wrong.
Right.
Sometimes you run to the coffee shop without them knowing, and you put $1 in their jar. And they may never know, and that's okay, because that's not the point. The point is you moving on, not them recognizing.
Oh, that's good.
There seems like and we talk about this in theological circles, Kyle, a lot, that when we understand how much God has forgiven us, it frees us or liberates us to help or to forgive others. I mean, tell us more about that experience, just as far as, do you find that that's true, this relationship of God forgiving us and our ability to forgive other people?
I do. And it's also a testament. I think there's a litmus test. I was talking to some students about this week, where that there are times in your life where you're holding on to something large, and the idea of what God did for you, you go, I need to let that go. And so for some people, that's such a difficult piece. For others, it's something smaller. And what I've discovered in my life, that when I am struggling with my daily walk, I begin to see unforgiveness. The big stuff, forgiveness, I got. It's the little things that irritate me that I find difficult. And so I think there's a reality of how are we interacting within our relationship with God, which is why when you're working through this process, your prayer, your Bible reading, your time with God really matters. Because once we recognize that God's love for us is not limited, that there is these expectations, there's this responsibility, there's all these things that are a part of it, then we begin to feel that trust to forgive others. But again, look at it on both the macro level and the micro level. Because for some people, it's very evident, you're struggling to trust God because, man, you don't trust anyone. For others who have already made that journey, they're struggling to trust God because they're holding on to the grudge, holding on to these little things. And there's an evidence of how God is working within their life or how God is not working within their life. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of switching gears a little bit, Colin. I know we've talked about, we work day in and day out. All three of us do with college students, right? We love working with college students. And I think one of the things we've talked about is that this generation of students we're currently working with tends to take on a bad rap. Is that fair to say? That sometimes the cultural perceptions of them, you can fill in whatever buzzword you want. But we've talked just our different experience, Kyle. So talk to us, what do you love about this generation? What is it about college students these days that you find, man, I think the majority of society may get it wrong in their perception or attitudes towards these 18 to 22-year-olds we're working with right now?
So I will tell you as a whole, I probably have more irritating initial conversations with this group than I have with any other group, but I have a much more satisfying follow-up conversations with this group than I've had with any other group. They will come in with these ideas because they're desperate. They want to know things. So they're ready. If they read something on the side of a bus, they're ready to regurgitate that back to you. And so a lot of times that initial conversation where they have these ideas and these opinions and they'll spout them really fast. And again, they know more than I do because they have access to information much quicker than I ever could even think about. And so that initial conversation with them sometimes can be irritating because they'll come in with these ideas. But what's been amazing is when you show them love and respect, they'll come back and they will have deeper conversations than about any other population I've seen in a long time. They want to learn. They are able to change the way that they think about things. And we sometimes want to think about that as a negative. You know, they are not so solid in their faith. Well, no, they're becoming though.
Right.
These students are becoming. And so I love that. They have a true desire of being authentic in who they are in their relationship with God. And sometimes they will define that in such a way that's, again, can be irritating.
Sure.
It's like, true authenticity means you don't drink out of this cup, you know, and then later they're drinking out of that cup going, no, wait, true authenticity means you don't use that. But I love that search.
Yeah.
I love that deep desire to really know, to learn, to figure it out. This will be a population of students who really can make a big difference in the world because they have such a heart for people, have such a heart for knowledge. And it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Like I said, I do understand if you are staying at the service level, working with this population, why it can be irritating. Because they are, in some instances, as excited as somebody new to anything, asking a lot of questions. And if you don't have the patience for that, it's going to drive you crazy.
Sure.
But man, they'll get it.
Yeah.
And they'll get it quick.
Yeah, and we've talked about just their resilience. I mean, you think about what they've been through the last few years with COVID, and I mean, and yet,
Oh yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
they're still trying to figure it out. They're still moving forward. They're still, and I love that about this generation is just that inner resilience that they have.
You know, one of the things I love about OKWU is that we are committed to equipping our students, and not just their everyday lives and the here and now, but their calling and their future. And we have a variety of resources that your department, Kyle, and your team are really at the tip of the spear on helping equip students to take ownership, to take responsibility for their lives right here, right now, but also down the road. So talk to us a little bit about some of the ways that OKWU is coming alongside our students to equip them in the here and the now, but also for the future.
So there's lots of areas. I think anywhere from athletics to the classroom, to chapel, to a spiritual life. Something that I'm very excited about is, of course, this path.
For sure.
And I don't even know if you guys have spoken about that.
Tell us just a little bit about it in case we have some new listeners.
Okay, so PATH it stands for Prepared Attitude Transformation and Hands-On Learning. It's the idea of we wanting our students to recognize that everything that they're going through right now is a part of their resume that they are becoming, to help them leverage the possibility that something they're going through in the moment can be something they can use to help demonstrate what they've learned. What they've
You gave an
changed.
example. I think it was like last week or something.
I did. I will. So if I will use an example, I changed up some things.
Fair enough.
But if the person who hears this knows who it is, that hopefully I think it'll be okay.
It's okay.
No, I was working with a student who had trouble with some roommates,
Some relationships
some
on
relationship
campus.
issues,
Yeah.
but was finding it difficult to confront this group. And so we met, we talked about it, came up with some strategies, and the student went back and was able to work with his friends and the people within that area, and turned out well. And so he came back very excited, and he said, "Hey, I tried these things. It's going really well." And I stopped him and said, "Well, hey, you need to take note of this. This is a great resume builder right here."
Yeah.
I mean, what an amazing opportunity if somebody says to you in a interview, "Have you ever had a time where you've had to deal with conflict, and what did you do?" Well, this is the story you tell. Pull this out. And what I love about this, that what PATH does, and that's part of what PATH does in their coaching and those things, is helping students recognize that moment right there. That's a great moment that you need to take stock of. And you know, Ben asked me at the beginning, what are some things that I've been through that's helped prepare me? I've had those moments. Mm-hmm. And each one of those moments, and what happens is we sometimes will forget about these moments, and we won't mark them down, and then we come to something and we feel like, how am I ever going to do this?
Right.
And then we get into it and realize, oh, it's not that bad.
Right.
You know, we've been here before. You know, and I love that, of course, James is, you know, my brother counted all the joy when you fall into diverse trials, knowing this, that the trying of your faith works patience, and that patience has its perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Love that. I love that movement. And so that's what PATH really is about, is helping students to recognize those opportunities where, you know, what you just been through, that's a resume builder.
For sure.
But also to help recognize, too, that our behavior and our actions in college, they don't change a whole lot when we get out of college. And so recognizing both the positive and the negative. What are some things you want to change? What are some things you intentionally want to change? Because if you are constantly getting into, we use the term common denominator a lot. You have come to me now with 5 different stories of people that you've been in conflict with.
It might be you.
Right, right. The
Yeah.
one common denominator here is you.
Yeah.
Do you want to carry? Do you want this in your resume?
For sure.
So not only do we have the conversation of put this in your resume, we sometimes have the conversation of, is this something you want in your resume? Is this something you want to hold on to? And if not, then what's the follow-up? What have you done, and what are you doing to change that?
Yeah, I love the college context because it's
incredible.
truly everyday education, even beyond the classroom. Like, it certainly includes the classroom, but it goes beyond, and even something as, well, seemingly trivial, but it's not trivial, but as roommate conflict. What a
Right.
helpful education tool that we get to be a part of in shaping and transforming
it's
lives.
incredible.
Kyle, when you think about the work that we do here at OKWU, what gives you hope for our students and their futures?
It's always that's always a funny question to me as far as what gives me hope. I'm hopeful. I don't know what gives me hope. I am. I don't know how you can be a child of God and not have hope. I mean, there's hope, right?
Right.
Even if everything else is, unless there comes to a point where I stop being a believer. If there comes a point where I don't believe that at the end of the day that God is God, then I think I don't have hope. But I get excited when I see the movement that we have. There is research that tell you that college students, this age, is when you are facing the highest levels of stress in your life. And you oftentimes will think that how can they understand stress? They don't have the bills. They don't have this. They don't get it. Well, it's because they're becoming. And so I have hope that God's will always win out. But man, I get excited to see how He's going to do that. And when I get to work here, I get to see a glimpse of some of the tools that God has to use to make a difference in this world. I love that. I get excited every day to come to work. I've done lots of different things because I get bored easy, but I love it. I love working with the students. I love working with the team that I have. My life has been impacted and changed, and so I just seeing the caliber of students, and even the students that some would not put into the category of high caliber students, are students that will make a difference.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, and I say this a little bit joking, but as long as you've been here too, like, you get to see students that come back over time with stories of transformation that are just beyond probably what any of us could comprehend. And what a joy it is to be a part of their lives in this 18 to 22-year-old range. But then I would imagine there's an even greater joy when they're a little bit further down the road in life and they come back and they share, you know what, Kyle, that conversation that you had with me that wasn't very fun in the moment, thank you for that, by the way. So the work that we do is, it's hard, but it's holy. And Kyle, we're so grateful for what you do here at OKWU. This conversation has been super helpful. Ben, any final thoughts?
All right, Kyle, just appreciate you coming on the show today to share some wisdom and some experience with us. Thank you very much.